favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The amended agenda is approved.
You guys do that. Yes, we can. All right, do something.
Yours is okay.
Yeah, I've already
Yours is okay.
All right,
Yours has
got
it,
it.
so you're fine.
You should still.
All right, so, guys, first and foremost, thank you all for having this joint meeting. The board has been excited about this. We look forward to having this meeting for a while. I know we had one, I think it was in April, earlier this year, and that was a fun time, I guess. And hopefully, going into this next budget cycle, this is going to help set a good standard into how we work in this next budget year. And we're optimistic, obviously. We have new admins here today, Dr. Hester and Ms. Candy McGarry, and we're really optimistic in a good budget cycle this coming year. Of course, Candy's working overtime now. We've had a few folks get rehired in, and it's required a lot of time, but it's looking like it's going to be a good year. We're excited. So, yeah.
Just from the school board, I think this is our first meeting with what we consider sort of our new team, the new future for the county. So welcome to both of you. Jesse, I'd short term forgotten that we had the April meeting with the budget. Just really forgot that, but I know I had to think about it a little bit. It seems like so long ago. But anyway, we are really looking forward to sitting down and talking with each of you. I think for all of us in Nelson County to be prosperous and successful requires us to all work well together and to know, one another's goals and aspirations, whether it's as a system, as a school system, or whether it's as a county and a community. So the meetings like this start the foundation for that. We have had a couple in the past, but again, sort of in this new era, I'm really looking forward to all the good things that we can do. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean we're going to agree with what everybody's saying. I hope when we sit at these tables that it becomes the safe space to say, I have concerns or questions about this. Please help me understand why you do this. Because if we don't have those kinds of true and honest conversations, when we walk away, we're not going to be any further ahead than we were when we got here. So again, thank you all for coming to join us. I know it's time out of your day, but we really do appreciate it. We think at the end of this, we'll be one step closer to communication. So having said that, we're going to have some opportunity for everybody to speak. Do you want your board members at this point to speak, or do you want to wait?
I don't think that's necessary. I think we should go on and then, because we're going to have a lot of opportunities to speak with the other boards.
That's fine. So, Dr. Hester, if you've got a presentation for us, if you want to do. And thanks to Candy and to Dr. Hester both for preparing some slides for us.
All right. I'm pretty excited that the clicker's working, so that's a step in the right direction. So that's the small things. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit of information. Just really wanted to do a quick layout of Nelson County Public Schools and where we are right now. And this is our current mission and vision. And it's really to educate students to become skilled, responsible citizens and productive and enlightened who contribute to society. And as far as the vision, it's empowering generations through excellence in education. Where are we right now? We've put out the announcement that we're fully accredited. The last, it was the Board of Supervisors meeting on October 11th, and then again at the school board meeting on October 13th, shared with this. And just as a review, the accreditation system for the state of Virginia is a tiered system. It's complicated in that it has several different criteria that fall in line with what constitutes, whether it's academic achievements, climate and culture in terms of on-time graduation, chronic absenteeism. So there's a lot of different criteria that go into it. And so for this current school year, we are fully accredited. Now, I say that we fully recognize that even within this data, we're always looking for growth and improvement. So we continue to really have our administrators and instructional teams taking a look at where our achievement gaps are. How do we minimize that? How do we develop strategies and provide interventions to support and minimize those gaps, while also pushing students forward, whether that's in accelerated classes, regular college prep classes, it doesn't matter. Each student is going to be addressed and pushed as far as they can. In terms of student snapshot, we shared our enrollment data at the last school board meeting. This is directly from that. I did not feel I had a need to change anything in terms of colors. We have students in our building that we are educating, 1473. So that's pre-K through 12. And as you see there, the breakdown of demographic ethnic groups. We also broke it down with economically disadvantaged status. The reason why we do that is when we take a look at our student body, we really then, obviously for accreditation purposes, but also when you take a look at each individual students, they're in separate subgroups. You can have a student in multiple subgroups. You can have a student that is African American and talented and gifted. You can have a student that is white and economically disadvantaged. You can have you can have white, economically disadvantaged, and SPED. So all these different subgroups kind of go into it. And this is our quick little snapshot and breakdown of our student body. So it does appear that we're coming in at about 69% white, 14% black, 12% Hispanic, and 5% multiracial. In terms of testing, multiracial is a new subcategory that is now being factored into accreditation. Economically disadvantaged, we're at about 61%. By and large, 2 of the 4 schools that are right at 61. We have one school, the middle school, at 65%, and then Rockfish at just below 60%. And these are our little guys, the reason why we come to work every day. When you take a look at the academic pathways, you can see the various pathways that we have taking place, not just core academics, but we have for a rural schools division, we're pretty proud of the course offerings that we have in order to provide all of our students a pathway to their success and their journey through it. And as you can see here, dual enrollment, we have 24 course opportunities. Now that dual enrollment can fall in early college scholars and early college program, which is just dependent on who provides that education, and also Blue Ridge Governor School. So we access University of Lynchburg, UVA, and Piedmont Community College for those courses. We also offer 10 advancement places, some taught through our face-to-face teaching and some virtual. We have currently 35 CTE courses and pathways that we have taking place. Fine arts and performing arts, 18. We also have talented and gifted ESOL and SPED. ESOL is our English as a second language students. Those 3 services are throughout each of our levels. In terms of middle school, we are pretty excited about our opportunities to provide CTE in various classes where they're pretty popular. The fine and performing arts are for our electives some of the most popular as well. And again, talented and gifted ESOL SPED. We have maintained the ability to continue to offer art, music, and talented and gifted ESOL at the elementary level. The picture you see down at the bottom is the Blue Ridge Governor School Senior Expo, which was a culminating event for a lot of those seniors. That it doesn't just take someone who's talented and gifted to be in the program, but just highly motivated. Athletic and activity opportunities that we have. You can see there, I'm not going to read through each one of them, but we have a pretty wide variety of not only athletics, but extracurricular activities and also co-curricular activities at the high school and middle school levels. Standby. Why are you going to enter our standby? So as we take a look at employee snapshot, on the left here, you see a breakdown of the number of teachers that we have by their degree types. We have a predominant number of our teachers with a master's degree. We do have 2 with doctoral denotations and then technical licenses and degrees coming in about 4 for the 149 of our teachers. And on the right, just wanted to do a quick breakdown of our staff and where you see the numbers fall. I'm not going to read each and every one of them, but just wanted to make sure that you'll see a common theme kind of throughout this is, I never want to put just one group solely, because it takes each one of these people on the right-hand side to make our division operate successfully. And I think if anything we found out over the last 2 to 3 years is how integral everybody is to the operations of it, and it doesn't matter what position they've been critical to the operations of our schools. And really honestly, like, where are we going? And I think I do want to go back to this actually, because one of the things I want to focus on is as we move forward, we're always trying to look and recruit high quality employees. And so I know our Human Resources Department did a fantastic job getting us ready for the start of the school year in terms of getting all those key positions filled. We have been interviewing for a Spanish position because that is something that, I mean, if anybody can find a world language teacher, I'm sure they could, have the pick of any position they want because there are few and far between. It's really, really difficult to find them, and we think we might have a chance at someone coming in, but we haven't finalized anything, so it's tough. It's a difficult thing. But I just wanted to highlight that column, or the 2 columns on the right. In terms of where are we going, I think you'll see this section. There has been a very deliberate attempt and efforts into really building a positive culture and climate. It takes time. It doesn't happen immediately. There's a lot of different things that go into doing that, but there's been a lot of deliberate attempts to do this, and you'll see a lot of them when you take a lot of these pictures. And the reason why is when you have that kind of overall stakeholder buy-in, it makes it a whole lot easier to kind of be moving in the same direction. And I started off the year with explaining, what's important to me is why. And understanding why I do what I do, and always trying to get back to, if I can explain to you why we do things, then there's a greater understanding. It's a lot easier to have that buy-in to what we do. And so where we're going, we have a theme this year of One Nelson, and it really just talks about the embodiment of a spirit where it takes everybody for us to be successful. And in these pictures you see, from the sheriff's office to the county office, to our cafeteria workers, our instructional assistants, our custodians, our bus drivers, our teachers. The picture down the bottom right, you've got teachers from elementary and high school. We have our community members in the front, and they were just so excited to be there and to be a part of it. And I think that was really meaningful to me and meaningful to a lot of people that were at, particularly the homecoming big game, but a lot of these other games, because it's bringing it back. When you have a one high school division, you want that to be a center point for a lot of the things that take place, and that's what we're trying to do, is bring back a lot of the energy that our community has and the pride that they have, and really kind of reinvest it in us. And that there's been a lot of effort, and that's gotten back to that One Nelson mentality, and we appreciate that. And I know, as someone who's been here, I think 4 months now, it's been a lot of fun to see that and the excitement behind it. Division engagement, like we've said, we've done a few community-wide opportunities where we try to get, whether it's communicating through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, just because we don't have every email of every individual in the county, as much as that would be great. We try to promote these things to get our county involved and our community members involved, our businesses, our organizations. October is Kindness Month, so there's been a lot of effort in trying to promote that. And you see here in the division, where the high school National Honor Society students painted "Be the Eye and Kind" in the wall that connects the middle school and the high school. So that kind of bridging of our students and trying to bring everybody together. The bottom left picture is the celebration of October 19th, Unity Day, which is the day set aside to celebrate anti-bullying. The efforts of the middle school to kind of put towards that. We've had tons of participation at all the elementary schools, the high school and the middle school, participating in our Unity Day, the Paint a Kindness Rock, all these types of activities. It's really been well received and people participating in it. We've had a few One Nelson days where people the staff wear their green One Nelson shirts, and they've done a really nice job with that, and I appreciate it. But it's been very deliberate, trying to get our entire division a part of it. That's that middle picture for homecoming. We had a division-wide tailgate, and that was a lot of ideas that we took from the superintendent advisory group, where they started talking like it'd be great to have all of our staff have an opportunity to be together and not just for convocation. And so we had a great group of volunteers and had a really great turnout for that, and people seem to enjoy it. And we don't want to just keep our commitment to the division, but we also want to, like we've said, extend it to community engagement. Just recently we had the Rockfish Zombie Run, which had a wonderful turnout, and it was really enthusiastic and a lot of fun. It had nothing to do with necessarily the academic piece of it. It had to do with the community and the relationships and just being as one, and that was great. We put a lot of effort into creating the One Nelson Award, which will honor staff, students, and community that's contributed and given back. Within the first month that we posted that, we had probably 36, 37 nominations. So we're waiting to get some things in to be able to give to the winners, but we'll be doing that soon. We just posted the opportunity to order One Nelson community shirts. That black t-shirt you see comes in ash, short sleeve black, and then long sleeve black. So that'll be an opportunity. We'll have another chance to sell them in a little bit. But it's just to kind of push that out to our community so they know that they're a part of it as well. And then, events like the Drive Your Tractor to School Day, that was a fun event. No one let me touch any of the controls in the tractor. I don't blame them. But it was a lot of fun participating in that and looking out and seeing people kind of line the streets and waving and just excited about it. People had pulled off to the side of the road just to be able to watch it when they could have easily driven on by. And I really enjoyed watching that, and I appreciated that. We continue to try to go out to the community and participate in Touch a Truck, kind of provide some literacy and family engagement opportunities so our families know that they're a part of it. And moving forward, I think that this is, for me, something that's really important. We just hit our 50th day today. We just had our 50th day of school, which kind of seems hard to get my head wrapped around. But as we move forward, my vision for this school division is to build that foundation to where Nelson County Public Schools is a model. It's a model for not only rural school divisions, but other school divisions within Virginia and beyond. And by doing so, to increase student achievement, positive culture and environment, narrowing the achievement gap, and really staying focused on narrowing the achievement gaps for all of our students, but also while pushing every student forward. So we're not focused on just one side of it, we're focused on all of our students. In highly effective teams of teachers and staff, we talk about student growth. We also need adult growth. We also need professional growth in supporting our teachers, our staff members to be the best that they can be and be able to provide those opportunities. And also to provide those environments for adult learning and growth, and for our administrators to lead their buildings. We do that. We need to have that growth mindset and continuing for professional learning, but also having that data-driven perspective to be student-centered. So it can't just be about numbers, because we're dealing with little humans. And we have to understand where they are so we can get to them and see what it is that that makes them tick and that makes them be successful. So you have to understand the data, but you also have to understand you're working with kids and you're trying to get them to be successful, and you're maximizing their potential. And it looks different for each one of our students. It's not the same. And we have to keep that in mind. And the last bit of that vision is the school board superintendent, central office staff will all support these schools in preparing the students for their future, whatever it might be, making them successful in work, college, military, and life. And I think we've seen that over the last few years, is just being successful in life was hard enough, let alone in these other areas. Like we said, we do acknowledge that we have some challenges that we have to navigate. We have the decreasing enrollment. And with that decreasing enrollment comes some pressures and some obstacles in other areas. We have a greater percentage of our students who are economically disadvantaged. We have a greater number of our percentage of our students who are SPED. Those student groups require more resources, services, and support than some other groups do, and we know that. And so we're working to try to find opportunities to be able to support those students. Our ESOL numbers they're not on a high number, but those students for a small rural division, the standards of quality still require a professional to be working with them, providing them services. And so we are still required and want to be able to support our students in that fashion. We have noticed that when we do have staffing availabilities, it's becoming harder and harder to staff. It's across the board, across Commonwealth, across the nation. It's a little bit more complicated here, trying to navigate housing, trying to navigate bringing in new to the job students, going from whether it's JMU or Lynchburg or UVA or wherever, but then having a place for them to live. Some of those students can commute, maybe from Charlottesville, maybe some areas, but to get the more veteran teachers to look into coming here, a little bit more of a complicated scenario. And as we all well know, you don't want to staff and fully staff with 0 to 5 year teachers, because they're still perfecting their craft and still getting better. It's really that sweet spot of 11 to 20 that kind of really help buoy everything. But we still continue to staff, we still continue to push forward. So for our challenges, that's kind of what we see going on for us as we take a look at the out into the future and out into the big picture. But we continue to be creative in how we go and recruit. I think we've talked about it in other places. You know, I know the Commonwealth of Virginia is looking for outside the box thinking in terms of recruiting and hiring. Well, not so much recruiting, but recruiting and hiring people into the industry, whether it's through alternative pathways, what have you. And I think we all try to get the quality people, whether they are, teacher licensed or not. We try to get them to look at us, but sometimes there are some obstacles we can't hop on our own. If the BDOE says that this is what it has to be, then those are the rules that we have to play by. But like I said, I can't applaud our human resources and our administrators and our teachers. Sometimes our teachers are our best recruiters, because they know people. And they know people in other divisions, and they try to talk to them and say, hey, why don't you come here? This is what it's like here. And so I can encourage us to continue to keep doing that. And that is the end of my little presentation. I didn't want to dominate everything. I know Ms. McGarry is going to have a lot to provide to us, but I appreciate it, given the opportunity to be able to share with you this. And I do thank you guys for the opportunity to kind of serve jointly, because I think it's a great thing to have all of us sitting at the table.
Thank you so much. Did you have a question?
Well, what do you think is most appropriate for us to save our questions for later?
It probably, unless it's something like informational, because we're going to have some discussion coming up after this.
I think so.
Yeah, she's got a quick question based on directly on her content.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that.
Well, the whole question of recruitment of teachers is such a difficult thing, and it's tied into housing and part of it, and we don't need to talk about it now, but you talk about different innovative ways you talk about recruitment. I think it would be worth it for us to talk about that a little bit. Not that you aren't trying different things, but that we all engage in recruitment, because the quality of our schools is so dependent on the quality of the teachers. And there's little things like, for instance, I think if we can find a way to allow a method of childcare for the teachers that are here, that might be a really powerful way of recruitment. If teachers know that this school system is dependent, it is willing to help them with childcare. And I'm in one of these boards that I'm on. One of the primary reasons, if not the primary reason for people not working, is because childcare is so expensive. So plus it can be a form of training. We could get the students involved in it too, possibly. I know you're aware of these things. I'm not, saying, but the whole idea of recruitment of quality teachers, like you said, young teachers become great teachers if they love their children. They will find a way to do it, and if they don't, they'll never become good teachers. But it's a wonderful thing that the teachers of the school, and I really believe you have contributed to that people feel good about the school where they work. Strange things can happen, where there becomes, one's work becomes fun,
And I would extend that even to all staff. And so teachers, research shows that impact teachers, but like, I think when you start having all staff feel that way, it makes everything tick. And so we just got to find ways to tap into bringing people here to do it, or people who are already here and they just didn't think about participating in this. How do we access our resources with even our retired folks to see how they can help support us. So I think you're right. The child care for teachers I know it's done in a division close by, and it's that I'm in it. And so yes, I think it's a great idea to be able to do that. We're kind of going through our own child care struggle. And we have some meetings with some local organizations that may, seem promising and what they may be able to offer us. So can that be expanded to our teachers?
We've talked at the board meetings, and Jesse particularly, his interest in child care is such a problem in so many ways for the community that, we certainly could work together.
I think that we can bring that up in the next topic with community visions, because there's a couple other items I'm sure going to tie into that. So, that's good. If there's nothing, other tiny questions for Amanda. Great. Candy?
Okay. Well, my presentation is probably going to be a little more dry and may have some numbers in it. Very not surprise. So I think mostly I was of the mindset of, we're getting ready for budget season, and just kind of prepping in my mind a little bit for that, and what information may be relevant to both boards going into the budget season. I guess first I wanted to talk a little bit about our beginning preliminary general fund balance, and this is on a cash basis. You have a printout in front of you if you need to follow along without looking at the board. So, you might hear out in the public or see in the paper, the county's got this $26 million fund balance they're sitting on. And that's true. However, typically we start out with the fund balance, and our estimated FY22 fund balance, which is unaudited at this point, was about $26.5 million. You then have to consider committed fund balances as of June 30th, 22 of $7.5 million. Those are funds committed to other things within the general fund. In our FY23 budget, we utilized about $7.5 million of our fund balance in our current year budget, and that's mostly carryover funds, ARP money, things of that nature. And then our generally accepted accounting principles recommend a 90-day operating cash requirement, or 25% of your general fund operating budget. So that amounts to about $5.7 million. So really, once you consider all those items, we arrive at a FY23 general fund balance that's unassigned at July 1st of about $5.6 million. And generally, best practices on use of fund balance is for one-time non-recurring expenditures. We are wrapping up our FY22 audit, so that will be on a modified accrual basis, which will differ from this cash basis analysis, because the auditors will look out 3 months from the end of the year and accrue back any expenditures or revenues that really apply to FY22. Just a little refresher on our primary local revenue sources. We're primarily a property tax based county. This includes our real estate and mobile home taxes, and we currently assess at 65 cents per $100 of value. Our FY23 value of the penny of real estate tax is approximately $307,449. Our FY23 budgeted revenue is about $20 million for real estate and mobile home tax. Our 2022 personal property tax is $2.79 per $100 value, and our FY23 budgeted revenue is about $6.2 million. The 2022 machinery and tools tax is $1.25 per $100 value, which declines over time due to depreciation accounting. And we have about 72,000 in that revenue. And the reason this says 2022 is because these taxes are on a calendar year basis. So these are from January through December. And our budget is built on a fiscal year basis of July 1st through June. So you're having to mesh two calendar years of tax rates when you're estimating those revenues for a fiscal year. It can be quite challenging at times. We also have a public service tax, which is assessed by the State Corporation Commission on electric utilities, water utilities, telecommunication companies, and internet providers, and electric suppliers. We have budgeted about $1 million for FY23 for that revenue. Another big one is our local sales and use tax, which is 1% of local sales. We've budgeted about $2 million for FY23 there. Another biggie is meals and lodging tax. The food and beverage tax, which is the meals tax, is a tax of 4% on local sales. And we have a budgeted revenue of about $1.1 million for that particular item. The transient occupancy tax, which is our lodging tax, is 5% of the amount charged, and we budgeted about $1.1 million there. In total, our total local revenue budgeted for FY23 is about $36 million. And local revenue collection is affected by shifts in economic condition. So, a little concern going forward if we have a recession. What is our collection rate going to look like in terms of our local revenues? Will people stop, spending as much to go out to eat or come here to stay for, weekends? Are people going to stop buying as much and our sales tax being declined? So those are some things we're currently watching for next fiscal year. Well, really in this fiscal year as well, and next fiscal year. So this is just a snapshot of Nelson County's tourism-based economy. You may have seen a report on October 4th. There was a press release sharing our 2021 tourism revenue for Nelson County as compiled by the Virginia Tourism Corporation. That reported a total of $83 million was spent locally in these categories. For lodging, and this includes second home spending, approximately $33.3 million was spent in Nelson County. Food and beverage took in about $17.8 million. That was spending of $17.8 million. And recreation was $11.9 million, with transport, including both ground and air transportation, being $10.8 million. Retail spending was $9.1 million. And this is to just kind of reiterate that this is money that was spent here. This is not money that was collected by the county. A lot of times you see things in the press and you think, wow, the county took in $83 million. What are they going to do with all that money? But this is spending within our community. This was up 27.7% from 2020, and these sectors employed 603 people, generating $16.5 million in labor income. 1.8 million in state taxes, and approximately 3.3 million in local taxes. Something you all have heard a lot about recently is our county's current debt capacity, which is around 57 million at the start of the year. So debt capacity is the amount of money the county has the ability to borrow, while maintaining financially sound ratios in various categories used to evaluate our financial position. So it's not the amount of money that we're paying, it's the amount that we have the ability to borrow and pay the debt service on. So as of March 2022, a $57 million debt capacity was based on the assumptions below, which was a tax-exempt interest rate of 4 to 4.25%, or a taxable interest rate of 4.75% to 5%, and amortization terms of 20 to 25 years. To date, $2.6 million of this capacity has been utilized for purchase of the Larkin property. Our financial advisor, Davenport and Company, will be providing us with an update on our debt capacity analysis sometime in November based on current market conditions. So, the higher interest rate climate may impact the county's total capacity, and we want to kind of get a sense of where we are now in the current economic climate. So some major capital projects that will impact our debt capacity is a new office space that's in the planning phase. This is for the Department of Social Services and potentially building inspections and planning and zoning. And this would be located beyond the food line, what we call the Callow Hill property in Livingston. Another item that's in the planning phase is development of the Logan property. Excuse me. Discussion of recreation center and fields and various other uses. And then also the school division capital improvement projects need to be considered as anything done there would impact our debt capacity. So some county projects and initiatives that are in process. We're working on the comprehensive plan update, Larkin property development planning, new office space planning for DSS, building inspections and planning and zoning, a public safety microwave network upgrade, implementation of an adult drug court in the county, future solid waste disposal planning, a county employee compensation study, and we're working on Tie River Bridge deck repair on the Blue Ridge Railway Trail. And also just application and management of various grants and studies, and then working to complete our FY22 audit. All right, so in the spirit of going into our budget season,
Here we are.
Here we are. This is just a general budget calendar, so you all kind of know what our process is. October through December, we'll be working with our departments and agencies to collect expenditure budget requests. December through February will be staff development of the draft expenditure and revenue budgets. February through March, we'll introduce the draft budget and conduct budget work sessions with the Board of Supervisors. And then by mid-April, the Board of Supervisors sets the tax rates and PPTRA percentage, that's the personal property tax relief percentage. And any changes in these tax rates require a public hearing. So I just want to point that out in terms of, when we're all working together in building our budgets, it's really helpful to know kind of where the school division is so that, the board can take that into consideration in building the budget and looking at any revenue enhancements that may or may, not be necessary. So it's very important to just point that out that, by mid-April, the tax rates have to be set because the tax rates have to go out. And then March through May, Board of Supervisors will conduct a budget public hearing, and then the budget must be adopted by June 30th. See, you're all not asleep, so I guess that's good.
No, that was good, thank you. That was.
Yes,
I have a
sir.
question. Will the compensation study be complete before budget discussions?
We are pushing for that to happen, yes.
Do we have a potential completion date?
We do not have a solid completion date. We are working on that very steadily.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Candy before we get into our next item?
I have a couple of questions.
Oh,
What is the second home spending, if that's people buying their second home here?
is that related, that's in relation to the TO? Second home spending, the lodging, okay.
Yeah, a lot.
I'm not really sure. I took that straight out of the Virginia Tourism Corporation press release. I can find out what exactly that means.
It'd be
if
interesting
that's
to me
okay.
because I know some people might have a second home, but it's under an LLC, and so every single home they have is under a different business name. How do you track if it's a second home or not? So that was just and then my other question was those 600 people, do they live here in Nelson? Do you know where they live?
Again, I do not. They came straight out of their statistics, so.
Just curious.
All right, but I can try to find out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
questions for Candy or Dr. Hester before we get into our visions? And then I think Shannon, you lead the charge.
No questions for Candy or Dr. Hester? So the idea of this next section from your board was that as a school system, we continue to be a reflection of our community. We spend a lot of time talking about what are our, as in the school board visions for the community. Very, very rarely do we make that a collaborative conversation where we understand what the Board of Supervisors vision for a school is. More importantly, the schools tend to be reflective of our communities. So as a part of that conversation, we thought it was important to also add into, not just talking about vision for the schools, but vision for the community. Because again, what we do as a community will to some degree be reflected in what our schools look like, whether that's enrollment, whatever that number may be. So that's why that's on the table for us to have a conversation about. We can, George, would you like to start? We can go one to the other, have George go, and then a Board of Supervisors member go, and hop back and forth.
I know we have a very exciting meeting tomorrow with a comprehensive plan that'll take about 5 hours, so we need each piece there too, so.
Thanks, George.
So first, just want to thank everybody for being here. I know we don't get to do this very often, but I think the last two and this one, I think it's been fruitful and will be in an effort to bring our boards closer together and so that we can work on the commonality of our goals and understand where each board is going. I see the county has challenges. The county always has challenges. We're a small rural county. It's always been that way and it always will be. I totally understand the fund, and that makes perfect sense. And I also understand that it took a long time to get that fund to that level and you can't just run out spending that money because it won't be there anymore. You spend the principal out. But as I've said at the other two meetings that we've had, these two groups, I am very interested in us working together on long-term solutions. As far as a community, I'm really excited that you all have entered into the Larkin property purchase because that is going to afford the opportunity to have more facilities of all different types for people in the community to use because Ms. Powell was just saying that the schools are a reflection of the community. The schools have also been the community centers, the community parks, which is great. I mean, we don't not want that, but it's important that we keep enhancing those things, okay? And along those lines, I mean, I think we all together need to discuss what we want the students to be able to achieve in this county. Because not everybody's gonna go to college. Those that go to college, some are going to community college, some are going to 4 years, some will go to Ivy League, some will go to the military, some will just go to work. And I feel like that, our goal, our job is to make it so that any child that graduates from this school system can go do anything that they choose to do. And we want to work with you all on long-term planning, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, so that we can discuss things like enrollment and capital improvement projects and infrastructure. Because I just did some quick math. Right now we have Tide River Elementary School, I think it's 27 years old, no renovations other than some repair work. Rockfish is 25, Nelson Middle School is coming up on 20, and the high school we sit in is 67 years old, and it's had a couple of additions and renovations. The most recent being the 2003, it had somewhat of a facelift during that time and some HVAC work done, but we have some real infrastructure issues that are going to need to be addressed long term in the bones of this building. And they're going to be quite expensive. And so it's going to take some outside the box thinking from all of us, I think, to figure out what we're going to look like. If we keep trending down in enrollment, what is that going to look like? Are we going to keep trending down? Are we going to be able to do things? Are you all going to be able to do things on your side of the board, to enhance population in the county that is school age? and our numbers go up, or we're gonna stay the same, we're gonna go down. And these are just the conversations that we have to enter, and I'm excited for doing that. I'm excited for the new leadership that we have, because I see that you two work really well together, and I'm very excited for that. So anyway, I'm excited for the discussion, to be able to do this. I know you've talked many times about housing, and I couldn't agree more. Many of our teachers don't live in the county because they can't find housing that is in the price range that they need it to be, because it's up here and it's here, and they need something in the middle. We just recently had discussions about those kinds of things, and you know, that's important, and that takes long-term planning, and I know the comprehensive plan is a big part of that. So I'm very interested during this meeting and subsequent meetings in hearing what some of those plans might be, you know, going forward.
All right, Mr. Barton, Mr. Reed, Mr. Parr, Mr. Barton, pick one.
I'll start.
Great.
I was really taken in Dr. Hester's presentation on recruitment, because the things that you talk about in recruitment are the same things that we talk about economically in the county for, I guess, economic recruitment, right? So, you know, if we're talking about childcare, housing, or salary scales, both in the city and schools, and quality of life and recreation options, these are all things that can that become recruitable assets in terms of both the school and the county. So doing any of those things, maybe all of those things, you know, elevates both of us together, and that's exciting to me. Take a look at that as being, you know, a discussion that we're now kind of comfortable dabbling around, and now coming down with some specifics about how to do that. One thing that would be interesting for me to know, and you don't have to answer this now, or you could if it's relevant, is we're going to have our study on the salary scales of the county. I'm interested not only in the capital budget going forward, but the salary budget going forward, because I know that you had that the school board had aspired to doing some significant improvement on the salary scale, both for support staff and for teachers. I believe you were able to do some of that, but certainly not all. If that is a goal that we have, and also a goal for the county to have, you know, livable wages throughout, that again is something that that raises us all together, and it does become relevant to you know, what our taxing options are going to be in the future. So, and that's a discussion we're going to start having relatively soon. So, you know, it's very exciting to me to know that that the goals that we have are similar, if not identical, and so the challenges we have are the same as well. So it gives us an opportunity to solve them all, or take significant steps.
Margaret.
What did you say?
I said that on the notes.
Well, you know, what I like to do is when everybody's talking, I like to pick up the words that they're saying, so that, because it kind of like triggers some of the thinking, although I can't guarantee that what is going to come out of my mouth is going to be, you know, what I was thinking of. So you all know me well enough to know that. So first I'm going to say thank you to Hester and to Candy for, you know, putting the work in. I know you guys are working really hard all the time, and I totally appreciate that because it's hard not to take a day off. I'm a lot older than you are, so it grinds it harder on me, I think. But I also am very excited about this conversation. And, you know, I just hope that we can keep these conversations going, you know, that so we can continue to work together, because I agree with Ernie 100% that our goals are the same. We want the kids that live here, even if they're not even enrolled, they don't have to always be enrolled to get services from the school. So we want every kid who lives in this county to have the best chance of growing up, being the smartest person they can be, being the most successful person they can be, for their betterment, for their family's betterment, and for the county's betterment. And if they want to come back and live here, that there's a place for them to live and a job for them to make their own way, here in the county, if that's where it is. I think some of our challenges include that the picture that we paint of Nelson has kind of two aspects to it. We have this really high, what we call all the time the ability to pay, that grading, because we have a high real estate value here. We have quite a significant portion of the people that live here that have a lot of money. We can afford very high value properties, etc., second properties, third properties, etc. And then, but at the same time, we're looking at the school population being 61% of it disadvantaged, and so I personally would like to be able to tease some details out of that so that we can kind of put that lens on what we're trying to accomplish here, where those achievement gaps are, because we want to be able to address them. And I think that is a fair way to look at it, and maybe we could ask more of certain portions of the population to help other portions of the population. I don't know, just to throw that one out there. And I'm interested in hearing the rest of everybody speak about what their goals are for not only the school, but for the county in terms of, I've been a pretty, maybe not as big lately, part of the comprehensive plan, but I'm very excited about that process and how that informs, the moves that the county wants to make going forward. What are the county's goals for growth, for bridging the gaps that we have right now, especially housing, and how are we going to take some of the investments possibilities or the investment capabilities that we have now to make that, to make that bridge. So anyway, I think like everybody else said, we're basically at the same goals, I think, and it's just going to be interesting to see how we get there, how we work together to get there.
Yep, Tommy?
One of the bigger problems in the talk about needing these taxes and stuff, and people can just pay them. That's not quite the way it works, because you've got so many people that are doing everything they can to pay what we've got down. And there's no way you can't have two different levels. That really hinders us a lot. And if you have a way of ones that can afford paying more taxes to pay them, but you really suffer with the other people.
Do we have a way of, I know we have tax relief for people who have limited income. How far can that go? Is that up to us how far it goes, or is it predetermined?
Some of it, I think, is by code and is outlined in the county code. They have to look and see just, what criteria related to that particular program could be adjusted or not.
good talking.
I think some of it is by state statute as well. As it relates to that, the relief that Mr. Harvey just mentioned, for those who are elderly or a little bit struggling, some of that is state code. As in terms of differentiating of different groups, I'm not necessarily sure. I don't know if that's possible.
Well, I certainly didn't intend to get anybody in the weeds of taxation. But, I guess we're saying let's be creative about, how to get there.
But I think what Tommy said, we talked about this before, and what he says is really relevant. If we can find a way to address that,
Right.
that would be a wonderful thing to do, because I know, the people who live in $1 million homes in Wintergreen think our taxes are incredibly low, and don't even think about it in terms of the tax increases, yet there are the people who live here. And is there any possible way to deal with that?
We'd have to look into that. I don't know that you can tax certain groups differently than others.
Well, you can according to their income. We already
No.
No.
No. What do you do?
You can if you are. I think we should probably exit the tax conversation.
Yeah,
go back to
totally.
a little bit more productive. But I think talking to Angie Johnson or Angie Hicks and Pam, and they can probably help you out some and trying to understand what that code is, because they're the enforcing mechanisms of that. So I would talk to them with staff. Mr. Harvey, you were still talking. It was your turn.
Hey, let me just highlight too, I want to acknowledge Mr. Perkins here, who is the 2022 City of Charlottesville Policeman of the Year. So,
just listening, and Candy mentioned studies on how to appropriate stuff and do stuff. And I've always been against it. We know what we need to do. We know where the money needs to go. We don't need to pay somebody else to tell us where we need to put our money. We already know that. So those studies, to me, as long as I've been working in municipalities type work, that you give these companies hundreds of thousands of dollars and say, oh yeah, you need to raise your employees' pay by 3.2%. We already know that. I mean, we're all sitting here, we already know that we need to raise some people's pay. We need to do something, we have to be careful with the way we structure taxes. We already know that. So spending a couple $100,000 to do a study on something that we already know, I think is throwing money to the bank. That's just my opinion. That money where we know it all needs to go can go to those things and start fixing those things without putting money in some company's pockets to tell us what we need to do. I mean, because the voters entrust in us to make these decisions, and I think we're smart enough as a group to be able to make these decisions. Whether you want to, some people like to use these companies to point blame where they said we need to do this, but we already know what we need to do. So I'm not a big proponent of doing all these studies when it comes to, do we need to raise people's pay, and do we need to, do we need to do this to this building? We know, where it needs to go. It's just getting the bids and doing the best work we can with the people's money in this county. And it's not, I don't think it is doing all these studies.
Art?
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to start out saying thank you to Dr. Hester and to Mrs. Powell. Opportunity was thrust upon you both to prove that you all could mend and grow, both in the school division as well as between the two boards. And I have to say, I'm thoroughly impressed with both of your leadership, and so well done. It's refreshing. But as far as vision, I keep it kind of high level and short. My vision and what I think our charge is to have a tax rate that supports all of our budget needs, all levels of our budget, without negatively impacting the individual taxpayer. And what I mean by that is I think we have to grow that tax base, and we need to provide the opportunities, the incentives to try to attract and add attractive infrastructure to attract families and businesses that will boost our tax base. Adjusting the tax rate is not the answer. Taxing higher income individuals is not the answer. At a higher rate or a different rate is not the answer. But if we can find ways, and the comprehensive plan, I hope, is going to help point us in the direction that this Larkin property is going to help provide some opportunity for us to provide some attractive infrastructure, whether it is on a personal level or a business level, so we can make people want to move here, bring their kids, and increase student enrollment, and at the same time, because as I said before, a family of 4 living on an acre of land with a house is a financial drain to the county. They are not boosting our economy. But what we need is those people need jobs, and so hopefully we can boost some business infrastructure to help with the tax base. But all of that going to, as Mr. Reed said, the recruitable assets, and I think it all ties in together. So.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. It is good to see each and every one of you, and I am so thankful that we finally got this meeting on the books and that we are here today. I think it's a great endeavor for us to continue to maximize ourselves, having these conversations, recognizing that we're all trying to come to the same goal. And I think that goal for me is excellence. Excellence within the community, excellence within our school system, whatever we can do to make sure that this county continues to thrive. And the way that it starts to thrive is through the people. So again, thank you all. A couple of things. Just by being here, I think there are lots of synergies that we all need to start to think about. There are things that we're trying to do, there are things that you all are trying to do, and we are somehow behind the scenes sometimes doing them separately. I think what would be profitable for all of us is to start to find those areas of synergy and start to work together as, I will have to take Dr. Hester's phrase, as one Nelson, because we all are trying to get to that very same goal. We talked tonight about an employee compensation study. I know that we have come to the table several times because we want to make sure that our employees are paid equitably and that we are able to not only retract, but also retain those individuals. And in order to do that, it takes salary, but it also takes housing. If we want this community to be the community we want it to be, we want those individuals to live here. We do not want them migrating from all of our surrounding counties and spending their money in those surrounding counties. We want them spending that money here. So how do we come together and create that affordable housing that is, and again, I will stress the word affordable housing for all. We have to make sure that we're putting that spotlight on equity so that absolutely everyone has an opportunity to be here in Nelson County, live here in Nelson County, and work here in Nelson County if they'd like to. So I think there are lots of areas of synergy, and what I hope is through these conversations, we will find that common ground and we will start to work together on those areas of synergy so that we can continue to make Nelson the county that it needs to be.
Barton. I do believe we all have the same mission. And have a real, and it sounds corny, but have a real love for Nelson County. And it's part of what we are. That's really good. Couple things. Education, you know, I'm taken by all you said about that and about for everybody who's here. All people need to be able to think for themselves. That's how they find ways to make a living, if they can think for themselves, because that's the world that we live in. And that's particularly important at a young age, that we have schools that really respect people who live here. To think that the highest possible education is possible for them. And I don't mean that in the terms of an Ivy school. I mean in terms of being expected to think for themselves. And my time in Nelson County, I've never been in a situation where people have not welcomed the ability or the opportunity to think for themselves. And so when we are trying to do things, we can make sense. It makes sense to have better schools. It draws more people. It makes sense for our children to have the best possible education. It makes sense that some of the wealth that is in Nelson County contributes to recreation. That parents have a place to bring their children and to interact with other parents. And I think we can do all those things, and they're symbiotic. They are. And we know each other, you know. We're not full baloney. We're not lying. We believe what we say, you know. And none of this is easy. The housing thing is, you know, where do you start with that? You know, the property we purchased, and you're involved in that, heavily involved in that. And we would like to build the homes to be stick houses, where we employ people from Nelson County to build those houses, and that those houses accumulate wealth for the people who live here. Jesse's going to come up with the answer to that question because he's knowledgeable about that. There's one other thing I'd like to say, because we've kind of gotten bogged down in a couple things that I'm not going to mention, but one of these things is the diminishing enrollment. We see that as a problem, but it is a problem in a sense, but it doesn't increase the cost of education because we have less children. It increased the cost per student of education, you know, per student, but it really is not a financial burden upon us. But one of the things that disturbs me that we might go in that direction of is something that has been spoken of very much lately, is consolidation. You know, from what I know and what I feel and what makes sense to me is grammar schools or primary schools of about 300 students just make enormous sense, or 200 to 300. We have these schools, one to the north, one to the south. We could consolidate. We could spend less money maybe on the cafeteria and administration, but it won't serve these children, because young children need to feel safe. We do everything in our society to make children feel less safe. I'm not convinced our society is less safe. But when the principal knows each child in the school, when the teachers know the children that come through, and the children grow up together and know each other, there's a feeling of comfort, which is the most important thing in education. Most important thing in learning, that a person feels that when they're in that classroom, they're involved in doing something that's good, that's for them. And you know, I just wanted to mention that, because I'm afraid if that we will have a study done that shows that we can save, when it's not a good idea. And it doesn't make sense to me, and I think if you thought about it, it wouldn't make sense to you
Bring it on home for your board.
Sen, you go on ahead. Wrap up yours.
So it's hard to follow my group because my group is pretty eloquent, and I always appreciate hearing what they have to say, and also following you, Mr. Martin, and your board. I think, when I look at vision and goals, again, we talk about the schools are a reflection of our community. When we say that, whether we've all said we want excellence or we want every student to matter, I think at the end of the day, we want every student to be successful. It doesn't matter what their background is. It doesn't matter where they want to go. We want every student to be successful. When I take that further and look in our community, we want every community member to be successful. And in the short term, there's a little bit of a concerning trend where we see the economically disadvantaged students incredibly increasing. I think when I first came on the board, it was about, and don't quote me, but it was maybe 54%. And just in the short 10-year time I've been on the board, it's increased to 61%. That's a reflection of our community. So when we say that we want our students to be successful and our students to do better, just know that we want to pull that whole family when we do that. We want everybody to increase. So the challenges I see that we have in the short term to potentially to achieving that, we have a high LCI, we have a declining enrollment, and we have an aging infrastructure. And so I don't think that should stop anything with any individual student, keep in mind. Whether we have 100 students or whether we have 100,000 students, our goal is still to educate every individual student to the best of their ability at that time, with all of the resources that we can feasibly provide to them through that. But I do think we've got some challenges coming up. And when Jesse and I were talking about this meeting, one of the things was just like, are we gonna talk about the elephants in the room? Are we gonna, what are we gonna get out of this meeting? And I think the thing that I hope we get out of this meeting is acknowledgement that there are some challenges coming up. There are challenges that we as a school system don't necessarily have control over, again, because we are charged with educating every student to the best of their ability. But they are challenges that could potentially affect us. And so that's where when we talk about synergies and symbiotic, that's where it's so critical that we are all a part of each other's plan, whether it's the community doing the comprehensive plan. We're getting ready to talk about CIP, and CIP is great. I mean, there's no doubt here, we have a rapidly aging infrastructure. And there's been discussion about consolidation. None of that should even be discussed until we have an idea of not just what our year, or 5, or 10, or 15-year plan looks like, because the lifetime of a school, if you look at this one, is 67 years. So if we don't know what our population is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, we certainly don't want to throw away any money. So again, I think my ask as a board member would be that as you are having discussions, whether it's the comprehensive plan, whether it's lands you're purchasing and how you want to utilize those, bring the school into that and let's all be a part of that, because as Janet said, there are a lot of things that we're all doing that we could be doing together, that there's a lot of power behind a group of people together with one mindset working towards the same goal. And so that, for me, leaving out of this meeting, it would be that we continue this relationship that we've started. I think Keedy and Dr. Hester are modeling what good looks like in those relationships, and I think we are all working towards modeling that, and we're in y'all models. Yeah. But anyway, so that would be, that's my goal, that's my vision, knowing still that we've got challenges coming up, but at the end of the day, it's still, whatever those challenges are, every student has to matter in those resources that they require. And we all know that our students, as their population changes, require more and more every day.
Thank you, Shannon. So, like all of you, thank you all for being here. And also thank you to the community members who are participating, and some of them have been frequent faces, and it's good to see them be part of the conversation. And of course, our staff doing who work tirelessly, and we're gonna work our staff very hard this week, aren't we, Candy?
Yes.
We have a lot of late nights for the next board, but, you know, I actually spent, the last couple, I don't remember when we met, but I spent a good amount of time thinking about, you know, item number 3, you know, community vision and goals. And, you know, I always sit here and I think, like, man, adjectives can be so cheap sometimes when you don't have anything, when you sit there and you're like, this is what I want to work for, when you aren't bringing in tangible things. And often when you look at the relationship between a school board, its government, and all the other agencies and non-agencies that we deal with, you know, you often get caught up in the complexity of it all. And sometimes it's not a good thing, sometimes it is a good thing. And which led to, you know, recently I had a actually really great conversation, probably one of my favorites now, with Shannon Irvin the other day, where I just sat there before we had some job interviews and we just talked about the complexities. I mean, guys, this is not simple. It's not. Some of the issues that we mentioned, housing, right? That's so easy just to say we need more housing. Oh my goodness. But as you sit there and you study and you look at the communities and you look at all the pieces and parts that go into that, from financing, the communities at large, the communities that it would go near, and then the politics that then exists around it. I think it's all sorts of complicated, right? And when we look at our school, it is a reflection of its community. And seeing that statistic about 60-some% being disadvantaged, I would say is accurate. I live it in my community and see so many in the Schuyler and Livingston communities who meet that 69% statistic. I also know many folks who have found themselves no longer able to afford to live in Nelson County because of the impacts of being in our metropolis area. When you find out the metropolis or the household income is near $115,000, what does that mean? That means any job, anything that's coming up is competitive from Louisa all the way to Nelson County, from Madison all the way to Nelson County. And now that Nelson County is almost universally connected, which is a huge feat, to see that we're about to have universally connected fiber internet in every household, has now brought on new challenges, like a diverse workforce. Now you're getting stories of software developers who are now living in Elma and making a 6-figure job, now homesteading with 3 cows and a handful of chickens. They've never done it before. But they have 2 kids and they want their kids to have a good opportunity and experience something different. And there's no better place to experience that than Nelson County. That's just a fact. With that, because of that attractiveness, it makes it more expensive. And we have to be ambitious as it relates to the housing stock of Nelson County. I'm reminded, Candy and I and some of our staff, we had a meeting in Danville City about the future of Danville and how they address that disadvantaged community and so many other options. And, you know, we always ask what comes first, the chicken or the egg, housing or jobs? And I got the best answer, and I'm never going to forget it. He said a pregnant chicken. You know? and I was like, and I spent my whole life wondering, and now I know. But that's so true. We can't talk about bringing opportunity without talking about housing. We can't talk about housing without what are the next opportunities. And Nelson County, as it is, we are making a lot of pushes. We have the comprehensive plan. We're looking at re-updating our zoning ordinance. We're looking in the last budget year, we made one of the most ambitious goals that we have done, and that's made $50-some million able to go for debt capacity. And what did we say when we did that? We had the schools in our hearts and minds. And we said we will be ambitious in supporting our schools. That also, in tone, we want to talk about what the future of Nelson is and how is it that we keep and retain families. I, for one, will come out and say, I'd love to see our pupil population stay where it is, maybe go up some, because I think that's a good thing, and we need that. And each pupil is an important piece of the Nelson County story and how we can continue to support that. Hopefully, with that acquisition of the Larkin property, we can help complete some of that story. And I'm optimistic we will. We have challenges ahead, as Candy brought up. Interest rates are high. Some of that's going to adjust. I don't think I've ever got, and I think Shannon and I mentioned it the other day. I said, every year we say it's unprecedented, didn't we, Shannon? Every year we did. We said COVID was a little weird. It is, and every year it's unprecedented, and it's going to be unprecedented forever. But we have the tools to do a lot of things, not all the things. We're going to do the darn best we can, and of course the schools have a big piece of that. And the board in the last, especially a couple budget cycles, have shown that, and we continue to plan to show that. And if I can leave this one more piece before we get on the capital improvement discussion. This conversation needs to continue. It can't stop here with, we have to be meeting one-on-one, 2 by 2, as these things come about. My board can attest that I bother them just about every day. Skip Barton's voicemail specifically. Right, Skip? And it's going to be important that we, as a board and the school board, have this conversation continuously. And what that looks like. It will be fluid. It's not going to be simple. And if we're looking to, if there are ambitions on tax rates, then those discussions need to happen now. Because it's not just our staff who we have to look out for, it's our community. And the community needs to have a long conversation with us about what implications that could have, positive and negative. And so if there are ambitions, I'm sure staff would appreciate those conversations sooner than later, not in March. We all can agree with that. And that is where I'm at before we go into comprehensive.
Anybody have any questions for anyone or any comments?
I have a comment, and I would, so I agree with you that we need to do some of the more informal conversations with the one-on-one and the two-on-twos, but I would also submit that we should, as the two boards, commit to a schedule of joint meetings where we meet like once a quarter, so that we can start actually working on, so when we present our budget, it's not any big surprise that you all know what our budget's gonna be before we give it to you. Because we've already been talking about it, and the capital improvement things and like that. I think we should commit to that. So that 4 times a year, we're doing this style of open meeting, and we can, our boards individually can vote during these meetings to do certain things. And so we can do board business while we're doing that, but we can have those conversations. I think that's important too, in between.
We had 2 joint meetings in 1 year. We hadn't done that in a while. So we got to biannually. We've been working on it. There we go. Yeah.
Next step will be 4 times a year.
Every time.
Is it working with, what are we talking about? I assume you're talking about it, 2 of you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't see anything wrong by getting, joint meetings, but Candy telling us what's going on.
Oh, sure.
She's telling you what's going on, and just,
And I think
work together.
we're totally interested in continuing those conversations. Of course, our boards are pretty ambitious in lots of meetings right now. Like we have one tomorrow night, and then the next night I feel like, I have a meeting the next night. And we have a lot of different projects. So I think that's reasonable, and I would suggest we kind of take it. Maybe there could be one. I would actually let our staff confer with each other and figure out what that looks like, and that way they know what they think is best, because they're the ones who are going to be throwing numbers at each other.
And I certainly don't think we need to commit to a schedule tonight, but I think if we had a target of, getting together after the first of the year, or as we go into our budget cycle and you go into yours, that might be a good thing.
I would agree with that. One of the things that it sounds like the budget last year, you would like more information on the front end this year as you go into it. So I think that's a great way, if our board, again, I'm only speaking for myself, not our board, but I would be interested in us having another sit down as a full group as we get closer to finalizing that budget, so that you have an understanding as a board of, what we are looking for and what we need.
Dr. Hester, when do y'all plan to have your generally budget complete this year?
Well, I would say we target mid-March. It's like an exciting thing. We have that in February, a good solid understanding. Obviously, with the governor's budget coming out in December, that highly impacts everybody. And I think, so that's kind of our target time. And to get back to the comment, like, we meet monthly, and we are able to have those conversations, and I think that's great, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, you two as governing boards, need to be a part of that conversation from time to time as well, because we don't vote on that. We kind of, implement the decisions of the board, and so I think we've had, you know, great conversations and plan on continuing that, but I think it's also bringing everybody together is a good thing as well. Because each one of you, I know, just getting to know my board, bring different perspectives and are very intelligent about their thought process and where they're coming from. And just like each one of you, and they bring something different, and I think that's important to be able to share that with each other. It can take time, but, you know, people behind us, all this being tax-paying citizens, like, I think it's important. I think it's important to have that conversation because we're all contributing it, and at the end of the day, there's a product that we want to put out. I know there's a product I want to put out, and those are my graduates. And I want them to be able to give back to this community, but I also want them to be the best they can. And I think it's going to take time, and I think that we're all busy, but I think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
So to kind of, I think, to help with that piece, it would make most sense to probably have a meeting before y'all have completed your budget. A January, February meeting. So, and I think.
We all have to have work sessions and all sorts of.
We actually
like
start, so we will start our pre-budget public hearings at the next meeting in November.
Right.
So we'll.
And there, I would say, okay, February, I think we can make February a target month. And then you and Candy can confer with each other what makes sense. Because obviously, like I said, we have new admin in a lot of ways, so, you know, we don't want to overburden our staff as much as y'all don't want to overburden yours. So we'll lean on staff to indicate in February what a good joint meeting would make sense. And if during the budget process, I think it would make most sense that if we feel like, and there's a good chance that we need to have something before we voted on the general budget, that would give a few months of opportunity if that's necessary. So that would leave the March, April, May. So those 3 months as a chance for another. Historically, especially as of late, we know it's a burden, we've been voting pretty late on the budget. I would love for it to be sooner, but it doesn't quite seem like we can.
Well, the General Assembly made it so last
Right,
year was very difficult.
last year was very difficult.
Very difficult for everybody.
This one should be a little bit better.
Yeah, they were 11th
Yeah, I
hour
don't
last year.
think you should say that out loud.
No, maybe not.
And I'm, as an individual, I'm also not opposed as we get more forward in this process, maybe this year, maybe next year, whatever, but I'm not opposed to us having joint work sessions on these types of things, whether it's capital or whether it's whatever. You know, the business that relates to us.
Sure.
Okay, we don't need to get in all of y'all's.
Right.
We have a lot of business.
The board's separate.
Yeah, exactly.
They have their own,
You know,
responsibilities.
and I think our staff, I'm fairly confident with this new admin, is going to be able to alleviate some of that. So yeah, keep leaning on our staff. We do a
I
good job
see
on
that. I see that.
Candy's great, and so is Dr. Hester. So, I mean, it's going to be a different year too.
Again,
We're looking
Thank
forward to it.
careful.
Yeah. Any other conversation before we head on to? So capital improvement plan discussion. We just have documents up to support it if we'd like. So I think, you know, one of the things that we discussed the other day is where do we stand in our buildings and what our needs are.
Is there any way to make?
Yep, copy.
Hey, Mike, you need to borrow my glasses.
I mean, I have those, but these are readers.
Oh, these are readers, and I'm in between.
So, you know, and again, this is just kind of, there's no process for this. This is an open discussion when it comes to capital improvements. But I think you all have seen this ad nauseum. You know what these numbers are. You know where we are. The challenge is, and if I understand correctly, the roof, the brick.
The board is committed. I think our staff was waiting for your staff to give a number. Is that still?
So we're update.
Is this our number? Drum roll?
Oh, no.
Oh. Is it that bad?
Those numbers are a moving target.
I mean, not good.
Well, just like
Right,
your
yeah.
building conversation about, you know, the first conversation that you had about the new office building. And then
Right.
the second conversation you had with them, they had somehow got
Yeah.
a lot inflated there, so that's why we
Yeah.
want to say, yeah, this is the number.
Yes, and this is fund capital improvement. Mr. Barton and I had the great pleasure of watching something that we thought was a number that was off by 300%. So
And that's about,
100%.
I think it's close to 200.
Oh my gosh.
Depends on how you want to look at
Well,
it.
how you do your math.
There were several-
It was twice as expensive as we anticipated.
And this is happening everywhere.
Oh, sure. Well, that's obviously 300%.
We're getting something closer to that.
yes, you
Is it?
look, remember, we're all old and can't hear.
And I thought really something. So, we have a document that's the school's capital improvement plan. I wish it didn't exist. I wish it was a subset of the county's capital improvement plan. It's just a school section. Because this plan can't be accomplished without the work of the Board of Supervisors. So, I've done this plan for 30 years now. And we chipped away a little bit at it, but there's never been a way to have a mechanism to get these things accomplished without us working together and working with monies that were turned over at year end or monies that were going to be turned over at year end. And we just need to come up with a better way of working together to get it in one place so that we're looking at it all together and coming up with the priorities for the county. The school board took the approach with it wanted to identify projects in the degree of need for the division. And so we have some costs that just don't go away. They're almost operating costs and probably should be in our operational budget. But one of them is school buses. You know, we have to replace school buses on a regular basis. The state recommends a 15-year replacement cycle. That's up from 12 years just a few years ago. And so every 15 years, we should be cycling out buses. So every year, for a 60-bus fleet, we should be retiring 4 buses and buying 4 new ones, so that it's not a big burden in any one year. So you'll see that on our recurring list. We have safety equipment. Each year we apply for safety grants, and if we are funded by the state, there is a 25% local match that we would ask the county to help us out with so that we don't turn state money away. So we have that in our recurring list because we're going to try for any grant that's out there that fits in with our mission and our vision. We're going to try to take the burden off of the county taxpayer. We had a consultant that came in that did some safety training for our employees, and he looked at our schools and he thought, wow, y'all have done a good job of our safety protocols. So that's with the grants that we've got. We've been able to do those mainly without asking the taxpayers to pay for those. So I'm proud of that. Vans and cars, unfortunately, we have a big transportation fee, and we still drive kids to Lynchburg every day. We drive kids to Charlottesville every day. And we have some really little ones that we have to transport by car because they're just too little to get on a bus. Did want to make a little asterisk beside Dr. Hester's enrollment numbers, that those numbers did not include our Head Start classrooms that we also have at Rockbridge and Concord. There's also a desire by MACA to start even younger students, so that number could grow a little bit as well that aren't in our pre-K-12 numbers. The next category after the recurring costs, that's a good year after year, are the things that are immediate concerns of the school board. The high school roof, these numbers were put in when they were added to our plan, so they haven't been adjusted by inflation. So I talked to Mr. Harvey today, we emailed back and forth today, and he said that for our roof project, that if we would take the number that he gave us in 2021 and adjust it by 15%, that may be a good number. So they didn't want to go on record with anything official because the record is just so volatile right now. There's a lot of federal dollars that every school, not just Nelson County, has at its disposal to spend. So there's going to still be a lot of pent-up demand over this next 2 years while this money is being spent.
typically, as interest rates go up, housing drops off and prices come down. That might be a delayed effect now because of the federal dollars, so just keep that in mind that when we're bidding this project, we have to meet the federal guidelines of when the monies can be spent, that we're gonna be competing with 136 other school divisions for, labor for projects.
So Jesse, I don't mean to interrupt, so Jesse, you were asking for numbers for the roof and for the
Yeah.
envelope.
So the project, when he gave it to us,
I think it's maybe 1.5 more million.
probably had it with me, but I don't know.
We were talking about, I guess it was those.
So in 2021, we had the, cost of the roof at $5,451,345. He's saying to go 15% over that.
And that's kind of what we've learned, is it's still a guess.
Yes. And there was a big caveat in his estimate of the 15%, that it is just a guess.
Those two things combined.
Right. 5,451,345.
And if you guys were using ARPA funds.
Yes, we can contribute to the cost, but we can't pay for all of it.
No, we understand, yeah, that we understand.
So we've got $1 million disposable that's coming in from the state this year, and that's coming in a wire transfer, and so we're getting that cash. And so if we don't spend it by June 30th, we would have to have that carried over, but it would be in the carryover balance that's being turned over to the county at year end. Okay. So that's $1 million of it. And then we have 1.7 designated out of our ESSER 3 monies. So it's 2.7 of that amount. We also have a HVAC equipment grant that required a local match. It was $290,000 and required a local match, and we spent about 3/5 of that at Ty River and the middle school finishing up our control project. And so we have a couple $100,000 from that we can attribute to an HVAC improvement. So as part of a bigger operation, like a renovation, it would probably qualify. I don't think it will qualify just for a roof.
So that puts us in contributing, what, about 40% or so? So that probably,
Yeah, probably 40 to 50, depending on which bid comes back.
But we do have a pretty pressing time frame issue with that, right?
We do, because of supply chain issues. We have some school divisions that are on the waiting list, and they've just been waiting and waiting. We haven't even placed the order yet.
Right.
So I'm fearful that we have a June 30th deadline for the state money that we're gonna ask you to carry over. But the federal money has to be spent by September of '24. So
Is there any reason why do you have to go to RFP?
we can go through cooperative procurement, and we've already talked to Garland Company that's come and presented to our board, and there is a cooperative agreement with them. They're in Charlottesville.
Are those architects or?
Roofing.
Oh, so you're going straight to
the preferred contract.
for the state. Okay, so you've already engaged at this point. Did they complement that number?
And they only use
At the time, but again, we won't know until we get further along the road. You know, they have given us some ballpark estimates that seem like it would work, but until they go out for bid for the subcontractors,
Sure.
they won't know for sure.
I mean, I think if the money's there, you should be ambitious and start moving forward. That way we can, as our staff can bring this to us maybe in November, December. We can figure out if that needs to come out of the debt capacity thing, or if we use the general fund in the interim.
So our ARPA funding that we, the board dedicated towards this project $1,577.
So it's about $1 million-ish, somewhere in the neighborhood. So what I would suggest that you guys go ahead and engage and try to go out for bids so that we as the county can put this on the agenda as soon as we can. This is a project that we had committed to in boards prior. I don't see us not being committed to fixing that issue. So I would get in line.
Is there any concern that any future renovation project, now I'll assume that on the horizon that might be, could impact the money spent now on the roof and brick?
I have that concern, in terms of what that renovation would look like for the old one. Particularly.
It's the same roof.
That's the, you think the old wing would be the issue in terms of the roof?
Yes. That's the, I had another year that Mark really did because it upgrades the HVAC system. So those type of launch events, especially on this back, probably affected.
I mean, if we fix the roof and brick problem now, and then at some point in the near future, we do this renovation project, are we gonna be
Undoing something.
undoing something we just spent a bunch of money on?
And I think that will probably happen, I mean, because you can't foresee, all of it, because depending on which renovations we do, and what contractor has to get on the roof. But they did say if we had new HVAC stuff going on, that they would come and supervise that removal and put back to make sure the roof system is still under warranty. So he did commit to that for me.
I just worry if there's something under the ceiling.
Right.
They think it's not working.
They're gonna undo the $6 million we just did.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, have you brought that up to Harvey?
No, because we didn't know the funds that were available in terms of how big of a scope we would be looking at. If we can't do anything else, we need to do the roof completely.
Right.
So,
I mean, it is.
but if we're gonna do more than that, then that's really where we need to know the scope.
Well, I would say, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
If it is gonna, I would feel like going to Harvey and then finding out if this, if the high school renovation was going to impact that roof, that would definitely, impact our thoughts on the next one, because we might as well just throw the money at the next bigger item.
Except for the money that.
Well,
Yeah,
the money that needs to be used by September 30,
I
2024.
think this is where we need some insight from kind of your long-term vision and investment in the schools, because, we've been waiting on some money for many, many years, and we understand the constraints for all of that. And so do you fix the problem you have right now, or do you wait and hopefully get more money down the road that may come 5 years, 10 years down the road? I think not knowing what the CIP investment in the school system looks like in the next 0 to 5 years impacts whether we should or shouldn't do this project. The other thing is, if we talk about a remodel, how expansive and what kind of funding do we have for that remodel, and what is that gonna look like? Is it gonna be, we're just gonna pull flooring up and do, that has to be, I think, a broader conversation we have to have.
Yeah, and that's where the 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan comes in.
Right.
That's why we've got to be having these conversations ongoing to understand what that looks like. I mean, now we have a leaking roof that's got to get fixed. The timing on that, the clock is ticking. And what's also concerning is what else is going on under that leaking roof. What else are they gonna uncover? So I think there's more of a reason why the 5, 10, 15-year plan needs to be discussed, so that we all have a clear idea of where we're going.
That's part
And I
of the
think we're all
problem.
in agreement, is that we don't wanna spend money, this money is so precious to us that we don't wanna wastefully spend it, because we need, from an infrastructure standpoint, every penny we can get from the county to make these changes. But like you're saying, we need to all be very thoughtful and very smart about what that looks like. The challenge with this project is that there's a time stamp on some of this money.
And not to get in the weeds,
Yeah.
not to get in the weeds.
Yeah,
on
sorry,
this.
on yours too.
Yeah.
Not to get in the weeds on this thing, but you go back to the '03 renovations that were done here, and they were good, but they were somewhat superficial. We dropped the ceilings in the building, because the ceilings were high, that helped with HVAC cost. I think it probably, we probably had some asbestos concerns in some of the areas of the building. But we have original subway tile, original floor tiles, we have original lockers, we have a lot of the original stuff. And then, by the way, the things that have been put in are getting near the end of their life. So if you go forward in the, not to jumpstart this, but if you have looked forward in this presentation, right now, we have $24.5 million in there for, an old wing renovation, and that's just the old part of the high school, not the part that was added in 2003. And that doesn't change the use or the footprint. All that does is modernize what's here, and we have lots of infrastructure issues within the building. So we really need to have that broader conversation about what's going to happen, because I think it is entirely possible that, I mean, the envelope has got to be done. If the envelope's not done, we're going to have infrastructure problems on the brick on the building, which is going to lead to greater problems. And the roof is part of that. You really can't do one without doing the other. You know, and we need to make decisions long-term. I mean, I don't think anybody at this table is even considering doing anything other than staying in this building, because a new complex is over $100 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. You know, so we need to have those conversations so that we can figure out what we need to be doing with the building and what you all can fund.
Expensive. And I think as a board, of course, when we look at our debt capacity, we did have the high school renovation in mind. It was. I mean, that was originally, some of the intent was 57 some million, some of that was gonna go that direction. I think that number was real. It's just a matter of how real is that number now, because we also know interest rates have changed, and there might have to be, as Candy has mentioned, some changes to the revenue in order to fill some gaps.
Yeah, and so I think to Katie's initial question, Shannon's concerns as well is, you know, that information kind of dictates some of this, but again, and this may be where, you know, we had that really successful CIP where we start talking broader conversations about what, you know, we know kind of what future enrollment will look like, what the community planning looks like, you know, what do we need this building to look like? What do we need that renovation to actually, to showcase?
So to your other question, Kenny, on one section of the school, I think I remember correctly, there's 2 roofs on it, and then the other section has 3. And they're gonna give us a, kind of a leeway to do this new project. So when you look at the layers, you know, you're gonna be, you can't go beyond on one end, and then you got maybe one more on the other side.
In terms of laying the roof product on
Yeah,
top of it.
Yeah, right,
Like
right.
one of them, with the
Yeah,
next process, one of them would take that to the limit,
Yeah,
with the others still.
then we would have to go down and, you know, vet that out and then come back. So, yeah, I understand. I mean, because, you know, it's a lot of money to get where we need to go. I mean, like I said, we all are, you know, fairly intelligent people. We know what needs to be done, and I think we can figure it out as a group. It's just gonna take some time.
But you have to make capital improvements, and that has always been the easy thing for the board to do, as opposed to operational costs, which the board has been reluctant to do, although operational costs can have the biggest influence on the quality of the education you provide. That's, you know,
Well,
that
building
has to be
infrastructure
measured.
can have a pretty big impact on learning as well.
Well,
yes,
classroom
if
that-
you're sitting in a classroom and it's leaking,
No.
How does that make you feel?
That's true, that's true, but I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
you're making decisions in where you're gonna spend your money. And not just schools, but the county, and you talked about housing. Well, if we're gonna do something about it, that's probably gonna get some money. And recreational things, I think people will much more support the government if they feel that they are getting something from what the government does. And the idea of recreation is really important to the community. And, you know, I just want to, make that
I
clear.
think it's also important to recognize, like, these are needs. This is not a want. Like, I'm not wanting to put a roof on because it makes me feel better about myself.
No, I
and I think
understand
that level of, like, these are needs. Like, we're not,
Well, that's
even if
why
we're asking for that
we
renovation,
understood that support. The roof had to be fixed.
Yeah.
You have to fix the roof.
I don't think that's something that just because we can't do all of it or some of it and we have a deadline just to not do this. I mean, this is something that we have to really,
But that's why we
Figure out.
put off this talk about renovation of the entire school. Not to say that it can't be done, but
but I think even
But
some of
not-
those aspects are needed.
I think when we walk around, you were here a long time, but even since you've been here, I think when we walk around, you see some of the state of the building. It may give you a better understanding of what we're asking for in regards. And look, I totally feel, I understand that we are a big part, but a part of a whole pie that you all are trying to take care of and manage. I think for us, what it is we've got this infrastructure that's here, and as Dr. Hester said, they're not wants, they are true construction, and at some point we're running into risk and safety issues in some of the buildings. So, we do completely understand the balance that you all are trying to juggle with managing the funds of the community. At the end of the day, we're just charged with managing the safety of the infrastructure for kids.
The other thing that's driving it is the money that we have available to go towards this project, and you don't want to lose the ability to put that money towards it.
Yes, yes.
So, in many ways, that's the driver that we have to look at.
Yeah, and my thought in asking the question was just to try to be thoughtful about it as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a situation. And it's okay, knowing we do.
I didn't think that they could give us a bid because there are multiple roofs on this whole complex that would be replaced by sections, and I think the questionable section is the old one. And so we would at least know how much that section is to know whether it's worth doing now or whether we should wait on that section to do the other. That might be the compromise that will get us through the grant period, or grant awarded, and still accomplish.
I mean, I think that's a
That
pretty
makes most sense.
thoughtful
That's a really good way to go about that.
way to go about it, so that's all I was wanting
And I mean,
to.
that's the whole purpose of us, and the value of us sitting here at this table together is just so that we can have these very discussions as a group. That's a good question.
Does that answer your question for the roof and the envelope for now?
For me,
No, not you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have our roofing consultant back at our next board meeting.
Okay.
So there you go, we can get that ball rolling. That is only the roofing part, that is not the building envelope, so again, we would be working with the architect. So when they estimated that, what's in this thing is 829, but I think we would increase it. He had 929, 347, again, I would anticipate another at least 15% on top of that, but that's another
One of the things that has always been a problem is not getting the information as quickly as we might if we were better communicators in terms of prioritizing getting that to us. So as soon as you have that, if you report to staff can disseminate it, and we can start, putting our head together to move forward on it as soon as possible. Yeah, it's.
So, again, the makeup of the capital plan was in sections. The red section, of course, was our immediate concerns, the things we would like to address first. Then going along a little farther, we had a blue section, which were things that we would like to accomplish in the next 3 years. We do have the full renovation of the high school in that section. So I was looking at the Gantt chart that the architect put in, and he said that would be a 44-month construction cycle. So that would give us several budget years to finance that project along. So it's not all money on that. The last section is the green section, and I guess it was green if there's money available. They're desired facility improvements. We can keep functioning without them, but they would be nice to have for our students and for our community. So they were a less priority, but still an identified project for the school division. Going on through the plan a little farther, you can see the improvements that have been identified for school. They are still color coded, so you can see and what priority we would do things at that building based on those identified projects. And the very last page, I'd like for your attention to because it's also color coded and it lists all of our projects in descending dollar order. And so prior to working together with the Board of Supervisors, when we were trying to get projects done out of our own budgets for operations, we would pick projects that were approved by our board that we could afford to do. So they might not be the most important thing for us to do. Like, for example, there are a couple green ones here, there's some blue ones, but it's $50,000 for the storefront window replacement. The first red item, which is an immediate concern. So that was pretty far up in our list for what the school board could afford to do. So that's why working together and accumulating funds and establishing a capital improvement fund is so important, is so that we can tackle those red items and not do the green ones and the blue ones because they aren't the pressing needs of the division. So I'll ask you to again, continue. I know our audit report is coming up, and we'll be identifying on a modified accrual basis what the carryovers would have been. But to consider putting that money into the capital fund so that we can work on these projects together.
Any questions for Shannon or any conversations? Your report makes it so easy to look at. Anything else for us? Or?
No, I'm just happy to be able to put this roof to bed.
Then we can start talking about the next roof.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, thank you for that, Shannon. Much appreciated. Jesse, anything else from your group or any?
I would say, as I sit here and with the changing dynamics, I'm fairly certain our board will need a retreat. I'm telling Katie now, probably, as we look at the overall arching comprehensive plan of capital projects. You guys have big needs. We have some things we got to look at as a county as it relates to how ambitious we want to be with rec and housing and other opportunities. So something to keep in mind probably in December, if I were to guess. As we look at this, but a plan of action would probably be helpful at this time. I'm assuming you could bring back whether it's entirely necessary, the CIP committee again. I would definitely encourage that those numbers be updated to the best, and Harvey needs to be there. He needs to be there for some of those discussions, because every time we have these discussions with a lot of uncertainties in this environment, it's worth paying the guy to be there and help us make a little bit more educated comments. So I think,
And I think as a group, as we're pulling these numbers together, especially for the renovation, if you all have some kind of idea of what that 5 and 10 year vision is too, as far as are you gonna suddenly draw more population and more students, or?
and I think that's, some of that's gonna come out in the comprehensive plan. Katie?
I'm sorry, say that
Oh, I
again.
thought you
You said you were gonna tell us everything?
you said you had the answer.
I can't give you all the answers like right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of that's gonna come out in the comprehensive plan. Where is the board's ambitions on it? Because for the record, we aren't 5, 10 years. And where we're at in this stage of government is we're doing a 20, 30 year scope, right? Comprehensive plans like this, it takes 20, that's the goal. When it comes to talking about housing, you can't start and act like that's a 5-year goal. That's a 20-year goal. And it takes many, many years to get those projects to fruition and at this point, we have none. So starting from ground zero. So we're gonna have a pretty big discussion in the next couple months. David's got a lot of work to do, so does Kip and Ernie and Tommy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important for everyone to acknowledge, and I think everyone has that, any investment that our board makes in the community, the schools, it's gonna take time for that impact to trickle down to improve our schools and community. You can't fix the housing problem overnight. You can't fix our, water sewer infrastructure issues immediately. And all those things they all kind of relate.
Yeah.
And then, at some point in the future that we can't really pinpoint, there's an effect.
Well, it's a conversation, it's a very good conversation.
Then there are gonna be some things that we just won't be able to fix, as we talk about, and you say it time and time again, culturally, as it comes to child production. I know I'm now a big critic of what's that Wendell Cooper group that always gives us the versus Weldon Cooper. Yeah, no, I don't trust them at all.
You've said that
Every
times.
year. But and that's piece of that story is, what culturally, in terms of having children, are we looking at in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, the last 5 years, we've lost 200 to 300 students at least. What does the future of that look like? We will get to probably, potentially, barring major changes in society, a 1,000 pupil school system. And I don't know how we change
But
that.
that's really a description of the difference between the boards. Their primary responsibility is to the children. And we recognize that, but those big ideas, housing.
Some of those aren't mutually exclusive because
They're not exclusive, but it's primary, our responsibility.
But that's a really good point, and what you said is a good point. So from our perspective, the way I view it is, we're gonna have to, we educate these children, whether there's 1,000 or like you said, 100,000. We just wanna have some semblance of an idea of what we're gonna be looking at. I mean, our enrollment numbers, if they were to stay the same and you project them out, you could get to 1,000 in, not too awful long now. Well, no, not that short of time, but it'll take a while, but we can get there. And I know this is a hard process, because if you try to court employers to come into the county, for example, what are they gonna ask you? What are your schools like? What kind of housing do you have? What's your education, your population, and what is your housing, and what's your tax base? And those are probably the 3 main questions that they have, and infrastructure. To throw in an important. And, so I know that's tough, but that's kind of what, I mean, if you're talking about 20 years before anything has an effect, well, that tells us a little bit about, what we got.
I don't think that's, our ambition is sooner.
Sure,
But I think the reality is, it's not. I would say that we're talking in our minds today with the capital improvements that we're looking at making, it's a 10-year goal.
Right.
If we decided to make, I would say, if we were decided to make a housing project of sorts in Larkin, it would take 5 to 8 years for something to happen between financial actual procurement and the rest. I mean, and I'm sure some of those will come to a reality, especially in this next budget session, and where we're going to be.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, we're at 8:30, so, one of the things we wanted to do was to do a quick tour, not a long one, a quick tour through a portion of this high school. That'll give you just an idea on, just some of the infrastructure we're talking about. Okay, so the one question, the one ask we would have is that we limit conversation. Les is gonna lead us in the tour, and, we just limit conversation till we're back in this room, just for ease of use of recording any of the conversation.
No talk.
Public is welcome to go if they want,
All right.
but we will head out that way. Les, our fearless leader.
Yep.